last 2 years, when the coronavirus had the world in its grip, was the pharmaceutical sector able to create jobs in South Africa? Following the release of disheartening unemployment stats yesterday, the Innovative Pharmaceutical Association of South Africa says the employment of highly qualified individuals is an opportunity to retain national talent. But at the same time, it helps address structural distortions in the labor market. Bada Pharasi, CEO of the association, joins me now to unpack this even further. Bada, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Let's talk about this. First, let me just get your reaction. When you heard that we are now sitting at an unemployment rate of 35.3%, did it come as a shock, or did you foresee this happening to our economy?
Good morning, Tumelo, and good morning to your viewers. I mean, 35%, actually over 35%. And then when you take into consideration those young people who have decided not to look for jobs, I think the percentage goes well over 40%. It's really shocking. It's not unexpected given the coronavirus impact, the impact it has had on employment and so on. It's really not, but it is shocking that we're at that level.
Yeah. How has the impact been on the pharmaceutical industry? Some may argue, whether informed or not informed, that because of the coronavirus and the pandemic, we've seen the pharmaceutical company making so much money. I mean, everywhere I went, whether it was in a Dis-Chem or a Click store, I mean, there were multivitamins spread across the counter when, of course, the virus and the pandemic initially started. But how has the impact been of unemployment or employment, would you say, on your industry?
Well, actually, we've been impacted as much as any other industry where people had to sit at home for a long time. But the one thing that we needed to do as an industry was that we needed to ensure that the medicines, particularly those medicines which had nothing to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, your chronic medication for your tuberculosis and so on, that those medicines continue to get to the hospitals, to the clinics, and to reach people. And so you could almost say it was business as usual. I'm not sure about some of the things being said that more money was being made, but certainly everyone had to ensure that we get medicines to the patients. Remember, while we had COVID-19 and we had to start working on vaccines in a way that has not been done before in terms of the time it takes, we still have to ensure that patients receive their medications for HIV, for cancers, for all sorts of other chronic medications.
Yeah. And Mr. Pharasi, if I may just talk about your perspective here, or rather, if you may share your perspective on the employment of highly qualified individuals, and that being an opportunity to retain, national talent, because we've been also reading reports about some of the most qualified and talented, individuals in South Africa also opting to leave the country because of the economy and choosing to work elsewhere in the world.
Well, let's put this into perspective. Our association, which is a voluntary association of companies that are brought together by the fact that they're involved in researching and developing novel medicines. Currently, we have 27 members. And yes, it is true that the industry itself, together with the supply chain, develops and employs over 14,000 people. Now, with the multinationals specifically accounting for over 4,700 direct jobs in the country. 70% of them, of course, are highly specialized in the form of professionals such as physicians, biologists, doctors, pharmacists, and even veterinarians. And those also qualified in the fields of management, of finance, sales, and communications. So we do employ a sizable number of people who are highly qualified.
And also, I know that you're also passionate about addressing the issues around structural distortions, and we're talking here about, the skill sector. How do you think this can be addressed?
Well, you would know that every year the country produces a certain number of graduates, highly qualified graduates, and a good percentage of them end up not being able to get jobs anyway. What we do as an industry is that we do provide opportunities for them to do internships that would allow them to get the necessary skills, which would have them employed either in our own companies or elsewhere in the supply chain. So there are lots of opportunities also for secondary industry. What we've seen of late, and perhaps one could say that the pandemic had something to do with this, we've seen a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities where young people, especially those based in academic institutions, have actually gone out and tried to come up with startup companies that have approached the pharmaceutical companies to help them with technology transfer, to help them get innovations to the market. And there have been quite a number of developments. So what happens in the end is that you have those people employed in the industry, but as you look at the supply chain, I mean, you have, there are secondary opportunities, as I said, because you have this in the supply chain, you have your distributors, you have your retailers, and so on. And when you have a new innovation introduced into the market, with time, you also have a number of generic versions of that medicine being produced by our generic companies in the country. And all of that actually leads to a lot more employment. So there are opportunities happening all the time.
All right. Well, of course, we appreciate you speaking to us, Bada Pharasi from IPASA. Thank you so much for your contribution. Of course, the CEO of the Innovative Pharmaceutical Association of South Africa. And, of course, Gareth, I suppose, seeing, or rather hearing from Bada that the pharmaceutical industry was just as impacted and hard hit by the pandemic. So surely the 35.3% does include some people that, of course, either worked in the pharmaceutical industry or hoping to get in. But also, it was important for me to ask because you remember in the start of the pandemic that everywhere you went, whether it was Dis-Chem or Clicks, I mean, all the products, the different products around multivitamins were just displayed. And you would think that they were actually hardly impacted, but they were.
They were impacted as well. And also to the kind of innovation that we've seen in the pharmaceutical and medical fraternity because of COVID. We called them side hustles in the beginning, but those side hustles, I think, are starting to make a difference practically and hopefully those side hustles, as we heard from your guest, Bada, saying that I think he called it a secondary style of employment, can actually end up creating jobs as well. So I think it's one of those industries that we should be looking at going, okay, what now?
What now?
Lessons we've learned, technology we've gained, how do we take that forward?
Right, absolutely. Well, let's bring it